some of the best creatives and some of the people that I know that have been on the spectrum and people I look up to that are on the spectrum, you have this unique ability to kind of take a microscope to a thought and expand on what it means and see something in it that no one else can see. And that's something that when I realized I could do that at a young age, it's like, wow, this isn't a curse on my life.
Hello, beautiful human. I am Zach. That is Anna. Welcome to the studio. Self-taught musician, artist, producer, the one, the only Livingston.
Yo!
Hi. Hey, guys.
Hi. How are you?
I'm great.
We've been fawning over your tank top.
Stop it.
Well, I was just explaining to Dan that there's different tank tops, right? There's a functional tank top, which is used as like an undershirt.
Right.
And then there's what you're wearing, which is a fashion-forward tank top.
You know, it's fun. I saw this one and I was like, the color just kind of screams. And I'm like, just like I saw it across the room and I was like, I choose you. Like there's just something electric about it.
Do you choose the shirt or does the shirt choose you?
Fashion is definitely not one of those things that called my name my whole life, you know? So it's definitely a newer thing where I'm like, I'm finding stuff that I actually feel like, oh, I want to wear that on stage, or oh, this would be really cool going back on tour to like have this as a layer and that kind of stuff. But it was just never something that I was really into when I was younger. So
you were talking about not being able to like buy clothes mainly because you were losing weight, right?
Yeah.
You were on this weight loss journey.
Yeah.
Does that play into it?
I think so. Like 2.5 years ago, I bought I was into this, like, let me really focus in on the things that matter to me, that I really want to get done. Because I had finished this album and I was getting dropped from a record label. And I was like, I really just want to finally focus on my health. But I'm like, I have all these clothes that I bought for years and I don't love how they fit on me and I feel like I'm hiding myself. So I just bought 20 of the same black t-shirt and like 4 or 5 of the same like Lulu sweatpants or whatever. And that became my staple wardrobe for like the next 2 years. Cause every time I would try to buy a shirt or a pair of pants, I was like, oh, I'm a 36. And then I was like, this fits great. And then I'd put them on 3 weeks later and I'd be like, great, these no longer fit anymore. Cause I was just focusing on, you know, my diet for the first time and that kind of stuff. So finally it's like the light at the end of the tunnel is like getting to a place where I've been basically at the same point for the last year and finally feel like confident in my skin enough to try on new stuff and get back into the game a little bit.
Beautiful place to be.
It's kind of like, I find with a lot of things, the more you cut out and the more that you focus on the center of it. Like when I was like, I want to go from point A to point B. Point A is I've never really taken care of myself. I've been in my bedroom my whole life and the bedroom's changed where it is. You know, it was in Texas and then I moved to LA when I was 20 and it was in LA, but I'd really kind of spent my life over a computer and creating songs and living in a world that I would like zone in on and try to create. And I was like, I want to try to live in the outside world for the first time. So that was my stab at like, you know what, it's going to be these few things I really focus on. And I guess shirts and fancy pants weren't the solution at that time for me.
But like living in the outside world, does that come after you make this album or before?
After.
Yeah.
All of this album came from closing my eyes and trying to find somewhere to go. I didn't feel safe when I made this album.
From what? What were you afraid of?
I was afraid of what people thought about me. I was afraid of my anxiety and kind of my obsessive thought that I dealt with my entire life since I was 9 or 10 with the things that I was told and programmed when I was a kid from other kids that were unkind to me, from myself who, you know, I dealt with a lot of negative self-talk when I was younger and just had a lot of anxiety that I never dealt with and never found a place to put until I met music when I was 13. And it became that outlet for me. And when I found I could also not just tell a story, but take all these different things that inspired me, like whether it was video games or movies or soundtracks or cinematic scores, and kind of throw them all into the mix and swirl it up into a song, that's when it was over. And I was like, I would much rather live in here than the real world, for sure.
You're genuinely self-taught, right? Like you learned this on your own, and mostly as an escape.
As an escape, and also out of necessity, because it's like, who was gonna produce stuff for a 13-year-old kid in Texas, you know?
Okay, so can you let's go what comes first? You bullied at school, clearly isolated. Do you learn how to make music first, or you just attempt to make music?
I heard songs that made my heart jump out of my chest. So that's where it started. I mean,
Like what song?
I heard like Some Nights by Fun.
Oh, so
and that
good.
song has so many different emotions in it. It has those feelings of overcoming, but then the second verse is about like leaving home and who wants to die alone, all dried up in the desert sun, and like all those lyrics. And then the bridge is all auto-tuned and like, you know, Jeff Basker. And I was like, this is just electric, and it feels like they were banging pots and pans together, but managed to still tell a story that I, as like a 9-year-old, can understand. And it was songs like that that really lit the spark. And the first step was, how on earth do they even make this? Like on a technical level, how did they make stuff sound this way? Are they using computers? Are they using real instruments? It just like drew me in. And so I kind of had this reverse arc of where the first couple years of it was discovering the magic of how you can find sounds and manipulate sounds and sample things and throw stuff together to make stuff sound like it was on the radio. And then the next journey was me finding that confidence to go, you know, I have some things I really need to get off my chest that I've been scared to say. And I kind of learned how to get that out of my system by learning how to produce and learning how to record and stuff. And then it became an outlet because I could package up those feelings into songs.
Interesting. But you started like one wanting to just duplicate sounds.
Yeah, I started. I was like, I would just hear songs and I was like, that's magic. And I wanted to understand the alchemy. And I'm still figuring that out, but that was the draw. And then when I found out you could do story with that, it was over.
Have you created music since like actually like living life in this new way where clothes matter and your head is not just down in a computer?
Yeah, I had a stint in Sweden after the first like really intense bout of touring, which was last year. We did like 30 headline shows in the US and then 5 in Europe back to back. And it was my first headline run ever. And, you know, it went from when I put out that tour, it was like 200 cap rooms. And I was like, if we sell 100 tickets, I'm fine. Like, I can't even believe this is happening, to every single one of those shows slamming and selling out and upgrading and being this like literally going from being thrust out of my bedroom where I made this in North Hollywood to the world, to, you know, 500, 1,000 people a night in these deeply emotional shows. And then I ended in Sweden after like nonstop 2 months of that and got the first chance to let some of that out of my system. And it's just so different, you know, creating after actually seeing the world versus just living it in here.
Bullying is terrible, and it's a terrible thing to go through. But is there any part of you that's maybe grateful for it?
You know, I am grateful because it's when you can find conflict and then make a decision to turn that into something that brings you joy or that brings you peace. It's kind of like discovering a superpower. And whatever that is for you, it's like when you discover the ability to convert pain into light,
It's true.
It's something that only you can find out what that is and how to do it, and whether it's through poetry or pottery or songwriting or producing. But when you find it, it's like you stop fearing the conflict and you stop fearing the villain. You almost invite it because you're like, this is fuel to the fire for my story, you know?
Interesting. I relate to that very much. I had no friends growing up, so I started a radio show from my bedroom.
That's amazing.
And it's been around for 18 years. So
And look at you now.
I don't know, not much. Crickets. But no, but I do understand that. I very much get it. And it was very much figuring it out all on my own, you know?
Yeah.
So, it is. You do invite it in. You do love it because that is the fuel to keep you going.
Yeah.
But also, it, in some way, also fuels what you're creating. Do you get what I'm saying?
For sure. Yeah, and it gives it dimension too. I think if everything was easy and if everything was, this kind of smooth ride, there would be nothing to add texture to what you create. And what I always loved about, I loved like songwriters that just could pull something out of my chest when I heard their songs. And it was everyone from J. Cole to Chris Martin to John Bellion, like artists that really pushed the envelope on what they were called to authentically bring into the world. And obviously, I think like a little bird, you kind of start by just imitating and flapping your wings a little bit. But over time, I think I found what I wanted to bring into the world from my own pain and from my own story. And seeing people do that with theirs gave me the confidence to be like, you know what? My story is strong and deep and real enough to me that I don't need to imitate. I can bring what I'm supposed to bring into the world. And even if it's just for me, that's going to mean more than if I'm walking in someone else's shoes,
Yeah, one of the questions we always ask is like, who do you make music for, yourself or other people?
I make music because I have to make music to make sense of my life. And I'm happy that people like it, but that's not why I make it.
But I do hear John Bellion in your records.
I love him.
He's amazing.
He is brilliant. And it was the first time I saw somebody that from scratch did the whole thing, like really the thesis statement of being 100%er and it being possible. I remember those videos of like him making All Time Low or Guillotine.
Yeah, so
and you're just like,
it's my favorite album.
Yeah, it's amazing transportative world to elsewhere, to imagination, to wonder, and also, sampling drums from here, gathering influences from these songwriters, and then infusing his own like authentic story and personality into it as a thesis statement for what it meant to be 100%er. I had never seen it before. It jumped off of my YouTube screen when I was like 12, 13, and I was like, whatever that is, I want to do that. And I think that's a lot of where the whole, let me just figure out how to bang pots and pans together until something works thing came.
A part of your journey was video editing, right?
Yeah.
So any similarities between Final Cut and Logic?
A lot. Like, at first it was, my dad had a couple old Sony cameras lying around the house, and I was like 11 or 12 at this point. And I loved big movies. Like, always loved Lord of the Rings, always loved the Star Wars, always loved stuff that took me elsewhere. And I was like, when I film this part of my yard or this flower or this hill and I color grade it in a certain way and maybe tell a story with the way the shots are woven together. Like, you can tell a story with a timeline on a video editing software. You can overlay layers of effects to make it feel emotional, to make it pull you in, to make a statement. And then when I discovered Logic as a software, and because they're both made by Apple, and I put it next to Final Cut, I was like, wait, a song is the same thing. A song is a story. There's a beginning, there's an end, there's conflict, there's a message and a statement you're trying to make, and then there's all these fun tools you can use to manipulate it and twist it and make it fun. And when I realized that with music, you're not limited to, like I was with video, having to film this boring small town in Texas where I'm from, but instead music's like a blank canvas. You could do anything with it. When that clocked in, as I saw people like J. Cole and Chris Martin and John Bellion, I was like, okay, this is the avenue. And I went all the way in on it.
Can you talk about the importance of the song Fairytale in your career?
Yeah. So I wrote that when I was 14. And I remember coming home from school one day and being like, what if I wrote a song about the moment that I discovered that my heroes are human, that they're just as broken and in pain as I am. And that means that I have to kind of go through the world and fight my own battles and realize that there's never going to be a point where it's easy. Because I'd looked up to people that had let me down in my life. And I know a lot of people have been there, but I was kind of encountering that for the first time. And I was like, what if I just tell it through the story of like Pixar characters? And I wrote it in one day and I made the beat for it, which was more of just a bunch of like string sounds and bass stabs put together. And I called downstairs to my mom and I was like, Mom, this is the first time I've made something that feels like it takes my heart out of my chest and puts it on a plate. And like really, I feel like I finally made something that explains how I feel. And I had never done that. And I was like near tears. I was like, I think this song's going to change my life. And of course she heard it and she was like, oh, this is wonderful. Like she got the story of it. But to see 2 years later, that song actually did start my career. It got me my first deal. And I've been singing it at concerts for, a year now. And it's just amazing.
And you were 14.
I was 14.
Was it inspired at all by your real life?
Yeah, because I had these mentors in my life, and I had people that I saw, that I thought at one point were invincible. And I would see behind the curtain of their life a little bit or discover something where I was like, wow, they really are still in pain. And they're really like an adult that I look up to is not automatically someone who's figured life out or figured out how to do everything. They're still dealing with stuff that happened to them as a kid. And that's a little scary because it's like you want to hold on to this idea that there's some golden standard of one day I'm going to be without pain and one day I'm going to be without this anxiety. But you realize like, no, you just get stronger and you find ways to handle it. But it's, no one's coming to save you. You got to fight on your own and you got to fight those things that creep up on you.
What a heavy realization to have at 14 years old.
I had a lot of time to think because I had no friends.
I mean, like I laugh, but I get it.
Yeah.
But like to be alone with your thoughts is sometimes a blessing. Could also lead to being a curse. But
Yeah,
making
yes, that's true.
But making something of your thoughts is kind of the middle ground between laying with them too long. Do you get what I'm saying? Like like doing something tangible with them, like writing a song.
Yeah.
It's different than stewing.
You're so right because, I do these VIPs before my shows, and it's amazing because it's like people will come in. It's usually 50 or 100 people. And I get a lot of questions about mental health. I get a lot of questions about how I deal with my own internal monologue, which I think if you listen to my music and you like my music, the chances are you kind of live a pretty loud and chaotic and beautiful internal life where you dramatize events that happen in your life. You're not just kind of walking through and letting life pass you by, but you're internalizing things. Big things and beautiful things feel huge, and dark things and anxieties also feel huge. And they ask me like, what do I do about anxiety? What do I do about those moments where I'm stuck in my head? And I say like, I don't have the answer for that. I don't know, but what has always helped me is when I can create momentum by, like you said, taking that thought or that fear or that emotion and alchemizing it with all the things that have inspired me and shown me a light in the past, whether that's the worlds I would escape to in video games or movies or soundtracks. And I fuse those things together. I fuse the fear, I fuse the agency and the inspiration and the pain and a bit of the wonder together. It like crystallizes a thought to make it mean something. And even if a period of my life feels like it's surrounded with fear, I can remember like, hey, but it gave way to this thing, this song, this moment that made it make sense to me. And it almost like justifies those periods that feel painful sometimes.
It's true. Deep stuff. You're a great conversationalist.
So are you.
Thanks.
How many songs did you have? So you were saying like once you wrote Fairytale, it's like that's the song that you were like kind of looking for.
Yeah.
How many songs did it take you to get there?
Probably 150.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. And then it took another 150 after that before I think I found my own sound. And I wouldn't even say that I had fully gotten to that point by the time this album was done. I think there's still, you could probably listen to A Hometown Odyssey and draw a few conclusions on who I grew up on, what kind of artists I like. And I'm not ashamed of that either, but it's just a constant discovery of kind of shedding the scales of like, this is what I love. This is what drove me to make music. This fuels the alchemy. But there's a shift, I think, that happens over time from, if this side is the things I love that inspire me, that I've been exposed to, whether that's music or art or whatever, and this is like my true self, like the voice of my inner child that wants to create music and wants to heal parts of me that I couldn't in other ways, and then now wants to really reach the world with it. The balance over time has shifted more towards trusting those strange ideas that come out of left field and kind of easing up on the outside influence, But for a long time, it was kind of just discovering how to make that shift over. And that's why other art and being inspired to me is like one of the most important things.
What role does moving record labels play in that process?
Massive. Because, you know, when I signed my first deal, I was 16. I think I just turned 17. And I was in high school. And to me, it was like this. I always joke there will never be a transition in my life as big as going from being a back of the class, bullied, alone, 16-year-old kid to skipping school for a month to talk to record labels and sign a deal, and a SoundCloud link of Fairytale and a bunch of other songs I had made had kind of floated around. And that changed my life, but I realized very quickly kind of the whole thesis of what Fairytale is about, which is I have this habit of idealizing people, thinking they have it figured out, and putting too much faith in them and realizing they're human too. Is like, I realized very quickly when I was 16, 17, nobody knows what's going on. Nobody, you know, the music industry is an amazing place of creative people and talented people, but at the end of the day, it's all people who are just trying to make their best guess at how to wake up every day and bring art into the world. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. And culture moves around, and people move around, and sounds and what's working on radio and on social media, that all moves around. And I kind of found out, you know, a couple years into that journey that it was still about me telling my story. And I can't rely on other people to bring that to life. So when I got out of a record label, you know, I got out of that first deal a couple years ago, a lot changed in my life. It gave me the space to realize, like, hey, you've never really focused on anything in the outside world. It's been all internal. Like, maybe this is time to go get ready for the touring you're going to do. Maybe it's time to take your health seriously and go on a different journey and challenge yourself. And I think it all started from that moment of realizing that there's no one that I can rely on that cares about this and cares about telling the story more than me. And I had to kind of take control of that in some way.
That's like a very important realization. Because as much as you have like people around you and there's a team, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's on you.
And the energy also starts from inside. You know, it's music showed me a place that I felt strong and powerful internally way before I found any strength in the real world or felt safe in my own skin or felt like I could play a show. You know, it's what I'm forever grateful for with this album is it gave me a place to find myself and find what I'm meant to bring into the world and how I view the world. And then there's been so many beautiful things that have happened since I wrote it, but I would like to think that it's all just an external reaction of something that happened in my heart when I discovered that I was born to tell stories and I was born to make music and born to make people feel something. When that crystallized for me, my health took shape. My shows, you know, when I started playing headline shows, they felt natural. It didn't feel like I was trying to be something else. Because I'm just so glad that throughout a lot of dark and lonely years in middle school and high school, I found my compass at the center of that. And it's just been trying to follow that as it gets noisier and noisier these days. You know?
I totally get it. What role I really do. I do understand it. Like finding your calling when you're young, like in high school or whatever, middle school, it's a blessing and a curse, you know? And it's a long journey. You know, you realize pretty quickly that it's like, oh, shit. Even at 10 years or whatever it is, it's like...
It's a responsibility.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
You got a lot of time left, and you're playing a long game always, and so much will shift around you. Culture is going to change. Like you said,
Everything is
music
going to change.
Dude, it's weather on rocks, dude.
You're going to go to college. You're going to find something you love to do. And if there's one message that I'm just trying to really drive into the ground with people at my shows, and this doesn't just go for kids, it goes for adults who have kind of put off their dreams their entire life. It's just, if people knew the power that they had to take all of the pain and all of the joy and all of their perspective from their life and bring something into the world that only they could bring into the world, we'd live in such a different place. But people don't realize that. They think that's for the other guy, or they think that's for the other girl. They think that's for the person that grew up a certain way. But I've seen people take some of the worst circumstances and create art out of it, and create science out of it, and create story out of it. And if you can find a way to do that, just like go soul searching, think about what inspires you. If you can find what that is for you, it doesn't matter whether you're 10 or you're 80, you're in for a brilliant life. And that's something that I'm so grateful I found when I was young, because I don't know where I'd be without it.
Can I ask, like, you were diagnosed with Asperger's when you were young. Does any of that play into this awareness, but also like your deep, really, really grounded perspective on reality in the world around you? Because a part of that is a superpower.
Being on the spectrum, to me, you know, I was 10 when they told me that. You know, I went in for a couple of days with someone with a lot of sheets of paper and a lot of interesting looking shapes on, you know, like, you know, the little, they show you the picture with the squiggle lines. I'm like, what does this mean to you? And they ask a lot of questions, and then they spit out a diagnosis a couple of days later. And it did a lot to explain why I felt so different. You know, all the things that I got made fun of, surely I could trace back to a lot of the things that I found were a part of being on the spectrum, which at first made me afraid, because I was like, well, yeah, I do notice that I think, and I get really obsessive about things that most people don't care about. I do notice that I talk a little different. I do notice that I walk a little different, that my emotions aren't the same as other people. I can't regulate them the same way. But it also gave me a place to understand why I felt these things. And it was kind of the spark of like, you know what? If I'm different, if I'm wired differently, maybe I could do something different. Maybe I could use that to my advantage. If other people's brains are wired to think A plus B equals C, and I'm over here drawing a line between A and Z, and it's this long, swirly trip to get there, maybe there's something along that adventure that I could, you know, make useful. And I think that's where the superpower comes in. And I tell this to a lot of people that come to my concerts that tell me they're on the spectrum. It's like the ability to focus, just completely dive into something, to give your life, your heart, your mind, your soul to an idea, and to zoom into a thought like you have a microscope on it. That's not something that everybody can do. Now, there are people with different skill sets, and there are people that are born to think in a very broad way, and they can be movers and they can be leaders. But some of the best creatives and some of the people that I know that have been on the spectrum, and people I look up to that are on the spectrum, you have this unique ability to kind of take a microscope to a thought and expand on what it means and see something in it that no one else can see. And that's something that when I realized I could do that at a young age, it's like, wow, this isn't a curse on my life. Yes, it makes me different. Yes, it makes me outcast socially, and it's hard on my relationships, but there's another side to life that I get to live as a result of it, and I'm grateful for it.
Beautiful and accurate.
Thank you. That's the thing too. I also noticed that people tend to look at their environment or their life and say like, well, I don't have a story to tell. Like I'm not from an interesting place. I haven't been through much. And I think I challenge everyone to look at life a little bit more poetically, look at it a little more romantically. It's like you can take these little moments in life and realize that they have really deep meaning to them. And I think that's what music allows us to do, right? Like when we hear a song we love, it can turn the color of a day into something different, right? That's what we're out here to do. It's what all artists that I look up to are out here to do. And it's what they do at their shows. And it's what I want to do at my shows, which is like, you can take the story of, you know, a kid who grew up in Denton, Texas, in Suffolk, in the outside of London. You can take the story of a kid who started making music in a basement in Missouri and find a way to stretch out your unique little life experiences into something that everyone can understand. It's something that puts your personality out there. Like, that's why art is magic. You can make small things big, and there's never a point where life gets boring if you can do that.
Hey, man. Can we talk about Brainstorm?
Yeah.
That's essentially a code word for overthinking.
Yeah.
It's weird, though. Like, you could have moments of genius from overthinking if you don't get lost in it. But how do you kind of decipher the difference?
Is what you said earlier about it's kind of you have a sweet spot where you can create something out of the overthinking, but it's when you go deep into that other side and you start questioning, am I spending my time on the right things? Am I doing what I should be doing with my life? Am I, do I turn left or right? Or when I have 15 paths to take, which one do I go down? That's what that song's about. It's about life getting louder and louder with all the good things. It's not louder with more pain, but it's like, I think the older you get, you honestly get more of a scope. You get more opportunities, and that can be really chaotic. And I'm definitely not someone who making fast decisions comes natural to. And I find myself a lot just stuck in here, just thinking the same stuff. And that happens with fears too, just living and repeating and repeating and repeating the same eventual scenario that I'm scared is going to happen that never will, or the same terrible thing that's going to happen if I go here and not there.
Any part of you like afraid that you're manifesting it? You're giving energy to something
For
that
sure.
most likely would never happen. But
And
in turn,
and then you open up the everything everywhere all at once of oh great, now I'm there and now it's going to be
you're totally fucked.
Yeah, it's over. So that's what that was. And again, it's like taking that feeling and that frustration and that electricity and saying, I'm going to, instead of making this quiet, meek song about it where I'm kind of shrinking from it, I'm going to make it feel explosive. I'm going to take everything that I want to unleash on that negative feeling and on that pain, and I'm going to turn it into a song, and I'm going to make it a statement against that thing. And that's what I'm trying to bring into the world, which is like when I feel like I did in middle school, which is where I was the biggest kid in the room, but I was made to feel the smallest. The things that I was told shrunk my confidence into the size of a mouse, but I was this kid who would take up half the hallway, and that dissonance was always so painful for me. But then to be able to use music to take a feeling that as an adult makes me feel small, but then make a song that sounds so big and makes me feel like I can break out of that. That's the contrast of what art can do. And when you take the power that you have internally and use it against that fear that is coming against you, when you feel small, you can use art and creativity and your idea and your power to fight it with something big. And so that's what Brainstorm was to me. It was, how do I take this thing that shrinks me and make it feel big and explosive?
Do you overthink the music you're making?
Yeah. But then I call it. There's a point where I'll go to like the dark night of a soul with a production where I'm like, every sound in this song needs to support this feeling, not 10 feelings, not 10 references. I want it to support what I am saying in the song. But the second it gets there and I listen to a version of it when I'm walking through my neighborhood, I'm like, okay, I can tell, like, this is the right track. It's there. I used to work on songs for months. I can't do that anymore. It's like a couple weeks I go deep, I get the sounds right, and then I'm like, I'm polishing this off, I'm washing my hands, I'm sending it to get mixed. Like I trust that this is what it needs to be.
How do you know that you've reached that point? Like, how do you know a song is done?
When it completes the arc of the whole process of you get the idea, you explore it, you define it and simplify it, then you embellish it and go to Funland and throw all the stuff at the wall. You pare it back, simplify again, and land with exactly how the song made you feel when you had the idea. When I listen to a mix of a song and I'm like, this is that little teaser that I had in my head when I had the idea for the song, when it was just stuck in here or on a voice note, there's like a moment where your heart jumps. Where you're like, this is, oh, I see everything this can be. And then it goes away and you have to fight for it for weeks. Whenever I hear a version of the song that is exactly what that spark was, I'm like, it's done. I'm gonna mess it up if I keep working on it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well put. You speak like as somebody who talks to a bunch of people. Isn't he like succinct?
Yeah, it just like sucks you in.
You really are. You're like very just to the point, but
Thanks,
also
guys.
like you leave nothing like you leave no part of the question unanswered. It's really well done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Just I've never given somebody that compliment, but
No.
like we talk to people all the time.
I've had a long life largely spent alone to think about all this stuff without anyone to really share it to. And that's not always good, because then it's then you get out in the world and you start hearing how other people think and live, and you're like, I've had a lot of reality calls in the last year where I'm like, oh, I have a really, really narrow view. And this is another thing about growing up in a small town and growing up in the South, and it's like I had this view like this my whole life, where it's just narrow, and it's like I thought I knew everything about music and about life and about how I was supposed to feel, and it was just a safety mechanism so I didn't have to understand. I know nothing. And when I got out in the real world, my eyes just move like this. My vision goes like this, and I now see 40,000 people in the span of a month, and I can see the emotion and the story in each of their faces. It just leaves me to reckon with the idea that, like, yeah, I might have some ideas about how this all works and about how I make sense of it, but really this is just a tiny sliver of what the truth is. And the only time I see and I feel the truth is when I see people under one roof at a show experiencing something uplifting and inspiring and hopeful and powerful that they take with them to wherever they go. That's the only place I feel clear.
Is there any part of you that feels like in that moment or when you go viral, whatever it is, that like you're essentially like these are the friends that you never had? Like,
yes. It's just, it's like when I show up to Luxembourg and there's 500 people in a room. I didn't even know where Luxembourg was. And I show up and I'm like, I look at these people in a room and I'm like, that look on your face when we're talking before the show or when I meet you outside, it's like someone I've known my whole life. It's like I've only experienced polars, like polar opposites. I've either experienced being completely alone or shoved into a world with thousands of people that I'm meeting all the time. There is no in between, but it's a lot less scary and jarring than I thought it would be, because I realized there is this truly magic thread that connects people, that connects the human experience. And when we're not operating out of fear or hatred or judgment, that clear thing in between us, that little electric thread between someone from Denton, Texas, who's lived this narrow life, and someone from Luxembourg or Vienna or Zurich or Kansas that's lived their narrow life, there's something that's unspoken that we understand when we share something over music. And it's just absolutely magic. I can't wrap my head around it.
What role does social media and TikTok play in your career?
It's the best way to open the door for people, because there's no gatekeepers, right? There's no editorial curation. There's no tastemaker. You're not kind of at the whim, and it's like, thank goodness, because I don't know if the daydreamer kid from Texas that I was making this cinematic Pixar pop music would have really found a champion in an editorial context that early, but there were kids who understood it. And I've also had a chance to grow up on the internet. It's a lot of times you see an artist come out of nowhere and you're like, what's going on here? Like, where's the money? Like, where's the push coming from? And it's like, no, I have the scars of being a 16-year-old corny kid that looked way different and wasn't comfortable in his skin, singing covers of Lewis Capaldi on the internet. I can prove it. Go look. And it's like, you can follow that journey, and all that I want it to be for people is when they see 16-year-old Lewis Capaldi cover Livingston out there doing his thing, and then 22-year-old trying to, make this dream come to life version. All I want to see is what they could do. Like, this is not something about drawing them into my story or investing time into me. This is something about, I am living proof that if you just keep your head down and you find something you love and you get to the living, breathing center of what your purpose on earth is, and you just don't stop, like the growth that happens internally from that, that's where the reward is. It's not that I get to play on stages now or this gets to be my career. I mean, those are amazing things, but it's really, there were so many different paths that, you know, I could have gone down in life, and this is the one where I feel like I found my calling and what I'm supposed to do, and all I want is for people to find that for them. It's all I want. It's what I feel people desire and want when they come to the concerts and they're just asking these questions to get to the bottom of that darkness they're feeling. It's just like, stick to the grindstone and find that inner voice out of all the noise, and great things happen.
That's true. And
social media is just one way to invite people along to that journey, to show them that it's possible for them too. And outside of that, it can be sometimes distracting and not always creative. But I like to try to focus on how to use it as a tool to leave breadcrumb trails, you know, for the story.
I gotta say, Pixar pop is a pretty good term, and you are in good company, and you do all have like weird things in common, like you, John Bellion, AJR.
Love those guys. I've spent time with them. They're good.
They're the best. I mean, they're three of my
good
best
eggs.
friends. Yeah,
good eggs.
I would. I'd go to battle for any of them, all of them at the same time. I would die for them.
You know how good they are at Foursquare?
I don't want to like play any sort of like old school recess game with them because they're gonna be great.
I found out, I think we were in Pittsburgh, but man, they just lay it down. I mean, I mean, it's
dodgeball. They're really good at too.
Dodgeball, yeah.
It's like things like that, like things you played in middle school that like I hated, like gym class. Anything that like kids loved in gym class, they're pretty good at. They also like would tap dance in the park.
You know what I love about them?
Good guys.
They, like, you can tell they have the childlike wonder for the world that so many people let go of, and it's why I think their touring is so huge, right? Like they're playing huge venues and they have a way of tapping into that thing in all of us that's like, I refuse to let go of that little spark of like believing in Santa a little bit, believing in magic, even when the world gives me every excuse not to believe anymore and not to see the good in it. And that's why I love their music, and they always push it, and they're just great, man.
No, they really, I mean, dude, the tour's crazy. They're so special. God, do you remember the first time they ever came to our studio?
Yeah.
I was thinking about SpongeBob. I'm
Oh,
ready.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, were they that young?
Yeah, it was the first
I've
time.
known them forever.
Nice.
Yeah, crazy. But you do things for a long time. Like you do music. You've been in a relationship for a long time.
Oh wow, you went deep.
I mean, you have, right? It's like half your life.
As of, is it the 7th of March?
I don't know. You're
Okay.
asking me for
The
your
7th of
anniversary?
It's the 4th.
Oh,
Okay.
Dan knows shit.
Okay.
Oh, the date.
I know today's date.
In 11 days, it's 8 years.
Wow.
So, which will be almost half my life. Yeah. I
That's
guess it's a little over a third, but yeah.
That's a lot.
You know, it's one of those things that love is this thing that can completely change you as a person, and the love itself changes over years. And you know, when you go from being a kid and being in love to being, you know, a young adult and being a teenager and being a young adult being in love, like that changes, and the story of that relationship changes so much. And I'm just so lucky to have somebody that has known me since I was that weird kid in the back of the class and had nothing. She was there when I had nothing going on. When kids were mentioning the lyrics to the rap songs I was putting out on SoundCloud and ribbing at me when I was in the halls, and I was just staying inside during lunch, and she still saw something in me. And now I get to, you know, I was in Berlin last week or 2 weeks ago, and it was the middle of Last Man Standing, and there were like 1,600 people in there, and it was Valentine's Day, and I was just like, saw her off to the side, and I like got out of the pit and like went and kissed her during the song. I was just like, you did this. Like, you know,
That's so
you
great.
really, really did this. There's people like that, her, and, you know, my mom, who's been there since the very beginning, like obviously, but she never made fun of my dream to create. She never made fun of how much I loved the weird things that I loved, the video games, the movies, the stuff that other parents might have seen as a distraction. She let me kind of not take school that seriously, you know? She knew I was working hard at something. And my manager also, who I've been with since I was 16, like both of them have just always known how much I love this and exactly what I needed to hear in the moments where I was confused or lost or trying to find clarity in it. They've always done an amazing job at helping me center in on that. So that's the thing that I want people to remember too. It's like the people in your life that invest in you from a young age. And I know that some people, in fact, many people are not so lucky to have people like that. But it may not show up in the form that you think it will. It could be in a friend. It could be in a mentor. It could be someone outside of your family life. If it's somebody that, if your family life is really difficult, like having people that really invest in you just gives you a whole other reason to push and to work. And I'm so lucky to have people like that in my life. I would have no reason to put this much time and effort, into the world if I wasn't doing it for other people,
She's your nightlight.
Yeah.
It's really special.
She's amazing. That song is fun. I really love Nightlight.
It's a great record.
Thank you.
But it is true, though, because in a world of you're surrounded by a lot of darkness, a lot of people bullying you and trying to cut you down. But that one person and your mom, those are the only two energies you needed to keep going.
I have this weird thing that
and they saw something in you.
They did, and I don't know why, because it's almost like people have a sixth sense, It's like they can see something in you before you can see it in yourself.
The right people, not everyone.
Yeah, and I'm lucky that I've never been someone to have a lot of friends. Like if you were to take a look at my day, it's not me talking to 50 people. I have an A team. I have a list of about 10 people in my life that I'm really close with, but I would die for any of them. I would take a bullet for any of them, and I trust any of them when they see something in my life or believe in something that I made that I don't believe in or whatever it is, or also call me on something that I think I'm right with or I think I'm doing the right thing, and they go, hey, this isn't you. This is the fear speaking. This is what you want to be or what you want people to think of you. That's what a great A team does for you. And when you can be that for them too, and it's like, I'm lucky to have a partner that does that. I'm lucky to have friends and even people on my team and my management that do that, which that's something really rare in this industry because a lot of times there's friction there. But I think that that's what's so important when you're trying to keep the center of it alive, keep the story, keep the why at the center. You can't do it alone. You need other people who also see the world in that way, who operate by the same why, and who can hold you accountable. Like, hey, you know what you're here to do, and we're here for you as you figure out how to do that. So it's just like people got to look for those people in their lives and not take those relationships for granted because they're just so important.
Was there any part of you that was seeking closure with A Hometown Odyssey as it relates to the people who weren't as supportive in your life?
Yeah, there's a lot of, when I listen to that, there's a lot of anger, in some of those songs, like in Architect and in Surprise, and there's a lot of this kind of darkness that I hadn't really figured out how to channel yet. And there's something about where I was in my life when I made that album, which was still very much alone, still very much seeing the world through this narrow view, where it was kind of just a collision of all this chaotic emotion in one place. My only qualification for every one of those songs was this represents something that I truly felt at my core and I needed to get out of my system. And a lot of different feelings ended up on there, but making those songs taught me how to be honest, and making those songs taught me this is what it feels like when you're saying something real that you believe in, and this is what something sounds like a la the other 250 songs that didn't end up on it, when you're being inauthentic, when you're hiding something, when you're trying to cover up an emotion of insecurity with false strength that you don't really feel, drawing from something else. Like making something and manifesting your internal life and your fear and your love into physical form in art is very scary, because you also have to look at it and challenge it sometimes and be like, you know what? I'm not being honest to myself. I'm not respecting my younger self right now. I'm covering up with this thing that I don't even feel because I want to sound a certain way. And look, maybe that works for some people, but for me, it's a matter of constantly holding up a mirror and being like, this resonates and this doesn't. So we keep what sticks and we leave what doesn't.
Gravedigger sticks, obviously. Authentic, yet cryptic.
There's something about when you realize that the enemy isn't coming from the outside. Like the pain that I experienced in middle and high school was a result of how I felt about the experiences I was going through. I would say it's because of what people said to me. I would say it's because of anxiety. I would say it's because of things, that were out of my control. But when I found out that, what is inside of my mind, the life that I choose to live in here, the way that I interpret, the way my brain's wired, and all of that fear, that is something that over time I can train and I can control. And at the very least, I can take it and I could turn it into something good. And that's what that song was. It was accepting, like, you know what? No one made me sit on that windowsill for 3 years during COVID and worry about dying every single day, be stuck in hypochondria, be stuck in obsessive, compulsive, repetitive thought. No one forced me to be there and to not step out into the world and to face my fears and to create things when I knew I had something inside to say, but I stayed quiet. That was me. I put me in that position. I let myself rot in pain, and I let myself stay alone instead of surrounding myself with people that I knew had wisdom and had the ability to help me. And when I look back on that, I'm not mad at that version of myself. I don't think he was weak, and I don't think that anybody who stays in that position in the dark of night is weak, because it is hard. It's hard to get out of that place. It's hard to find the strength. But I found that, like, once you take that step and you can say, you do not get to control me, what is in here. I control you. I get to turn you into something that can serve other people, that can speak to the world, and that can serve me. This pain gets to be something that I get to hang up on my wall as a painting and point at to myself and to other people and go, this is my story. This is what could have killed me, but it didn't. And now I want you to go do the same thing with whatever pain is in your life. And that's what that song is, and that's what people seem to feel live.
Do you have that realization or revelation before or after you lose a lot of weight and change your life physically drastically?
That process, to me, I didn't realize this until last week, because, the weight loss was a big thing. Like, a lot of people commented about it, and I hate speaking about it sometimes because I don't ever want to make it seem like I'm a better, more worthy version of myself to exist in the world because I lost weight. Because it's like, no, I had just as much to offer the world and to speak and to create when I was big as I do now. And I would hate for people to feel like they have to be a certain way in order to make their existence powerful and worthy, because that's just not true. What I find is the best way to explain it, and I just realized this, is what happened externally for me, finding, the motivation to lose the weight, to get in shape, to get up on stages and do the kind of show that I do. That's an external reaction from something that happened internally. That internal process of realizing my fears did not control me, realizing that I was self-medicating my entire life with food, with the internet, with distraction, with even video games and things I loved that I still do have a soft place in my heart for. When I realized that it was my job to first convert all of that distraction into agency and creating something that I loved that spilled my heart out into the world and made me look at a version of myself that I could believe in. Because that's what music did. It crystallized these thoughts and these fears into a version of myself that I couldn't see yet, but I could listen to, that made me believe in life and what I could do for the world in a big way. And the more that I heard that version and found a way to tap in, I would imagine what he looked like. I would imagine what he looked like on stage. I would imagine the look in people's eyes from the crowd. And I would imagine being able to do the things that my heroes do on stage in these huge stadiums where they run across and make it look easy. I could never have done that where I was. But the more that I heard the version of myself that I believed in and I pictured him, I knew that I could become that. I knew that it was going to take a lot of hard work, and I knew that I had to change things about my life and the way my day looked and make some big shifts to do that. But really, when it happened, when I made the decision to lose the weight, it wasn't the hardest thing I've ever done because the change had already happened. I believed that was who I was meant to be, who I was designed to be for the world, and it was just me unlocking and fulfilling that. And I could never have lost the weight without having made that internal change first, because that would have been treating the symptom, not the disease, not the cause. The cause was the pain that I felt and the insecurity and running away from who I was supposed to be. And when I addressed that, it's like the rest of my life fell into place in a way that I'm so grateful for.
Is what you imagined in your reality aligned?
Now, it is frighteningly similar. There were moments when I was 13, 14, where I was making some of these songs, and I would close my eyes and I would literally just imagine 1,000 people, 2,000 people in a room singing that song. And in the body that I was in then, where I couldn't move and I couldn't really dance, and it was hard to even get up off of a chair when I was the size that I was, I would dance around my room like there were 1,000 people watching, and I would sing the song and I would cry and I would be like, I believe that this one day will be reality. And I go to Europe a month ago and I step into a room with 1,000 people every single night singing those same exact songs that I would sing as a different version of myself, as a different human in a different body who had no reason to dare to dream that that could be real. And I get to live it in the real world, and I don't know any way to express how beautiful that feels and how possible it is. If I could do it from where I was, you could do it from where you are. And it's not a cliche. It's not a thing that I'm fabricating. I went further from who that kid was to where I am now than most people would ever have to go to achieve whatever they have in their head.
How did you do it though? How did you lose the weight?
I mean, on a practical level, it was diet, it was exercise, it was the stuff that they tell you to focus on that's boring and simple and requires daily habits. And, it was definitely about 1.5 years before the Ozempic boom came out of anywhere. So those allegations got to go away. I worked for it. Not that there's any sort of issue with those, because I think they're incredible tools for people and they can make it a lot easier.
Yeah, like would have if you
mentally.
Had it.
If that was around, I was like, it's like I'd beat the game before they discovered it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could have written so many more songs. It's like, I spent that much time walking and eating celery. Great.
You literally lose hundreds of pounds and then they just release.
No, that's how I feel. I mean, it's like and then they're discovering like these peptides and stuff, and I'm like, dang it, you just did it too early. You could have. But
everything happens you needed to do it on your own.
I did, because there's something, and this is something that I want people to realize now, because I have no reason to speak on the health space. I'm not a doctor. I don't have any advice. Like, you got to do what's right for you, and there's nothing wrong about whatever you choose to do if that's a position you're in, you want to lose weight. But something I will say is there is the same way as creating, making art allows you to realize a version of yourself that is more confident and stronger and powerful and realized than some of the insecurity that you live internally. So it allows you to kind of clarify a superhero version of yourself, right? Not for anyone else, just for you. when you really work hard to lose the weight or add muscle or wherever you're from, you could be really skinny, you want to get buff, you want to get big, or you could be really big and you want to lose weight, whatever it is. That's your journey. There's no moral basis to it. The process of who you become when you are in the day-to-day grind, in the silence of the morning or in the evening when you're getting your 10,000th step in and you're on your 5th lift of the week and you're eating chicken breast again or whatever it is, there are changes that happen to you on a molecular level. There are grooves that are being carved into your brain when you do something that you don't want to do, when you show up, when you don't want to show up. Your brain is a record that is carving new grooves and believing that you have the discipline to lead yourself and pilot your body and your mind into a better place. And the more you do it, forget about the results, forget about the timeline, forget about how fast you lose the weight or how deep of a deficit do I have to be in. Think about how your internal self begins to trust you with showing up to do the things that you don't want to do. And that casts a vote for the version of you that one day will wake up and look in the mirror and be like, oh my God, I did it. And that's an amazing feeling. I never thought I would feel that feeling, and I finally have felt that feeling, and it is amazing. And it's not something that ends when the process ends, but it's a part of you that when you learn you can do something you thought was impossible, you start to look around and go,
what's next?
Well, what else is impossible?
Fuck yeah.
Maybe nothing.
It's true. It's really, that's the right way to look at it. Can you just put into perspective, though, how much weight did you lose?
150 pounds.
You should be so proud. Holy shit.
Thank you.
That's incredible.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
And the scary part, though, was getting down 150 pounds and then realizing I was really skinny and then realizing, oh, wait, no, dang it. The version that I saw on stage when I was 13, he had like muscles and stuff. What do I have to do to gain muscle? Oh, no, I have to gain weight again.
It's a whole other thing.
You gotta go, and it's a different mental process because you have to be okay watching the scale go up slowly, not dramatically, but doing some different things. And it's been a whole different journey starting to do that for the last year. And it's not rinsing and repeating the same process of how I lost it. It's a bunch of new challenges and self-control there. And I'm definitely still figuring it out. But, it's one thing that, take it out of weight loss, take it out of self-progression or anything. It's anything in your life that becomes a mission, whether it's a main quest or it's a side mission, you can learn things in that area and in that pursuit that apply everywhere else, that apply to your art form, that apply to your career, that apply to your relationships. And when I stopped, I think the biggest thing that changed when I moved from a small town to the big city and I lived a little bit of life and I got out of my head a little bit, is realizing there is no area of life that's siloed off over here, that's a waste of time. Oh, I shouldn't be spending that much time doing this because I should be focused on the grind or like whatever it is. It's like allow life to pollinate all the things that are good, that push you, that bring you closer to other people. And then you get this like web of beautiful things that come together that all feed each other. And that ultimately can feed the art if that's what you want to do.
But you also got to take care of the web.
For sure.
Because the web can't break. Because if the web breaks, it's all broken.
It's done.
It's kind of true.
Over.
Yeah. By the way, Livingston's catalog and A Hometown Odyssey is waiting for you on Amazon Music. There's a link below. Can we talk about Sorry? The record you did with Macklemore?
Oh my gosh. That was a dream come true.
Great song.
He is a great human.
Ben is really one in a trillion.
I remember I was the biggest fan of Macklemore from the moment I heard Thrift Shop on the radio when I was 11, but I got deep into his catalog, like all of The Highest and all of This Unruly Mess. And Ryan, too, as a producer, who's also a dear friend of mine and taught me a lot. They're just brilliant in how deep they went in these songs that were tackling like really deep subjects.
Yes.
People don't know the Macklemore catalog.
You educate yourself right now. We'll put a link to the whole thing on Amazon Music. Plus, I would highly recommend, one of my favorite conversations ever is with Ben Haggerty, a.k.a. Macklemore. He's been on the show twice. But the first one, do you remember that conversation?
Yeah.
It was so good. Mm-hmm. Because, to your point, he does not fear any discussion. No. He fears tackling He'll tackle anything as
And he
art.
does not care what people think
No.
about him, and he's willing to speak his truth. And when I listen to those songs, those early Macklemore and Ryan Lewis like songs and the productions, those were some of the first things that lit me up for music, because it was the same thing as when I heard the Jeff Basker productions on the Fun stuff or the Jack Antonoff and stuff, and I was like, there's something about when you're clearly bringing so much inspiration together in one place and then making big statements with it. I don't know what else I want to do, but I want to do that. Like, I want to make big statements, and I also want to combine all the things I love into one place. And I remember that dream of playing a song with him one day, and I guess over time I just stopped thinking about it, but I kept listening to his music all through high school and all after I moved to LA, and I just woke up on an airplane on the way back to LA with a DM from him one day.
That's
like,
crazy.
Hey, I need you to come to my house and record this song next week. And I was just like, okay.
And you had never talked to him before?
I'd met him once on FaceTime with Ryan. So I think he had followed me. So it was like I knew he was kind of aware, but I wasn't sitting there like awaiting the magic DM. But I literally just showed up at his house where he has this amazing studio, and he walks in, and it's like, that's definitely Macklemore. Like, he in an incredible outfit, very well dressed man, very well spoken, great aura, and we sat and we talked for hours about advice he had about being an artist and how to handle change over the years and push yourself creatively. We did that song, which him and Budo and I believe Sasha Sloan, who's amazing, they all wrote that song. And Ben is very particular about his comping. He comps almost all his own vocals. He's a monster in Pro Tools. He runs. I mean, it's great. And about a year passed, and in December of 2023, this is a moment for as long as I live, I will not forget this. He invited me to come play his sold-out Hometown Arena show at the Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle. And our song was about halfway through the set. And he's playing Wings on the B stage, which is a song that shattered me when I was 13. When I heard Wings, it made me want to be an artist. I was like, he's telling a story, and it's about shoes, but it makes me want to cry. Like, that thing showed me what it meant to be a storyteller. And he finishes Wings, and he gets off the B stage, and he's running through the tunnel. And I see him come out the tunnel, and he's all sweaty, and he's just in a Calvin Klein tank top, and he's about to get dressed for the next part of the set. And he runs up to me before that song, and he just gives me a hug. And I turned into the 13-year-old version of myself in that moment that dreamed of having a song with Macklemore and playing on stage with him. And I wasn't nervous. My heart wasn't beating out of my chest. But in that moment, I was like, is this happening? And he just like hugs me. He's like, you're amazing, and I believe in you. Go crush it. And he goes up on stage, and I realized, like, this is a moment that I have dreamed of for almost a decade. And I'm going to enjoy it. And I'm going to realize, like, everything painful and confusing and distracting has happened for a reason, because there are things and flickers of stuff I saw when I was falling asleep when I was 13 that are coming to life, because I had a dream that I'd be on a stage singing a song with Macklemore, and now 8 years later I'm on a stage singing a song with Macklemore.
It's crazy.
It's just so surreal, you know?
Do you ever wonder if those kids that bullied you in like elementary school or middle school see what's happening and see you on stage with Macklemore?
You know, I really do, because like when you're that young, you know, it's like the things that make you different. And, you know, it's like a lot of the kids that would bully me were like the sports jocks, right? Like the kids who just like had great genetics from early on, and like always like the girls gave them attention, and they saw me and I talked funny, and I had a way bigger lisp than I do now back then. And, you know, it was just that I was different. So I don't really fault them for all that, because I know that they were probably just insecure. But I do wonder sometimes, like, I don't keep up with much of the kids from my middle school or high school, because I went to high school with a lot of the same kids. It was like a K through 12, so I grew up with a lot of the same faces. And there were some that I was pretty friendly with that you know, I think we had a good rapport throughout high school. I wouldn't say I had a ton of friends, but by the end, you know, I think I had at least solidified my place as the class clown, which was slightly less painful of a position than a full-on outcast. But, you know, I do wonder sometimes, but if anything, it's like the big thing I want to take away from middle school and high school is like, if you would have walked through the halls of my school and looked into every room and looked at every kid and been like, I want to guess which one of these is going to go on and be a rock star, I would be the very, very, very last one that you would look at and pick. And I don't just mean the way I looked. I mean the way I talked. I mean the stuff I was interested in. I didn't even like music until I was like 13. It's not like I came out of the womb like doing drum beats on the sofa, you know? And that's just what I want people to know. It's like transformation towards whatever your heart is guiding you towards. The end point and the highest form of you and what you could bring to the world ain't have nothing to do with where you came from, what you look like, and what people think you can be or what you think you can be.
That's true.
It's just what you believe is possible when you put your mind to that thing. And yeah, I would not have been the likely candidate for this outcome.
But like there's a couple ways to look at like talent, right? Like people come into this world and they have innate ability. But then there's other people who seek out a form of art as a means to survival, and they become the greatest. So, you know,
It's amazing.
Like, you need it to exist. So the stakes are a little bit higher than somebody who just like. Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, it's something that when you get hit with a dream, when it finds you, right? When the desire to write a song or make a film or tell a story or paint a painting hits you, you're now at a crossroads. And many, many, many people make the wrong decision at this crossroads. And this is where you end up with a lot of people that end up later in their life very bitter and very sad and very angry at the world and very judgmental at the world. And they are the people who received the calling to create and to channel and to turn their pain into greatness, and they ignored it. And it is a sad place to be because there's a million reasons to ignore it. You can start by believing it's not real, believing it's a fantasy, believing that, you know what, I have to be a part of the real world. I got to focus on what's in front of me. I can't go there. I can't think about creating or becoming more than I am. How dare I think I could be more than I am when this is what's around me, when this is the environment I'm growing up in? How selfish would that be to dream for more or to have ambition? These are all things that can diffuse a dream at the source. And it takes a certain type of fearlessness to face that calling and go, you know what? I don't care what anybody thinks about me. If I don't get this dream and this thought out of my system, I'm going to explode and I'm going to regret it forever. So by any means, I must do it. And it's those people that do that eventually you look at where their life ends up and you're like, wow, it doesn't matter whether they're a superstar. It doesn't matter whether they live their life painting on a beach town. You look at those people and you meet those people and you realize they're happy because they answered the call and they said no to the fear and they said yes to the wonder. And I look up to people like that, and I want everyone to end up like that, because the other way of denying that voice can end up in some really sad places.
beautifully said. A Hometown Odyssey is waiting for you. It's all on Amazon Music, plus all of Livingston's catalog is there for you too. There's a link below. Final thought?
Yeah, last question is there any part of you that wanted to go by Drake as an artist name, but you couldn't?
Yeah, so in the world of the internet, it's now pretty well understood the search engine optimization doesn't work in the favor of if I went by Drake Livingston.
Drake's his first
There's
name.
another fellow that would come up
Yeah.
Maybe.
way sooner than me.
Livingston's cool though.
Livingston is cool.
It stuck, and I'm glad it feels in line with the kind of music I make, I guess.
I appreciate your time and energy today.
Thank you for your time and your energy, and I've really looked forward to this for a long time. It's cool to see this reel because this is another one of those things that I've watched you for years, and it's just crazy to be talking to you guys now.
Well, thank you for giving us your time and energy. It means a lot. It makes me happy when somebody comes in here and like so well spoken. You're such a true artist. You're such a you have a good heart. You're like, you create heart centered stuff and very grounded. And they've watched our show.
A lot.
Thank you for being here, Drake
Absolutely.
Livingston. You're really very special. Link below. Listen to the music, please. Hometown Odyssey. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.